But let's continue to February of 2022. So this was when the capital raise was announced. A capital raise featuring new investors and existing WNBA and NBA owners brought in $75 million that was used to supercharge the WNBA's business growth, including better marketing and more innovation. And this is when we talk about the split, you guys, and why it's very hard for players to get more of a revenue share than what they're asking for. 42% of the WNBA is owned by the WNBA. 42% is owned by the NBA.
February 2022 rolled around, and the WNBA made what looked like a smart move. They sold 16% of the league to investors for $75 million. Back then, this felt like exactly what they needed. Cash flow for expansion, resources for better promotion, money to actually innovate instead of just surviving. Jump to where we are now, and that same decision has become the biggest headache in women's basketball. Here's what nobody saw coming back then. What do you do when your league's value goes through the roof overnight? What happens when a media rights package worth $2.2 billion shows up at your doorstep? That 16% chunk they sold off in 2022 is exactly why players can't secure the revenue-sharing deal they're fighting for.
16% is owned by this investor group. Now, looking back at it, you guys, the WNBA was not doing well in 2022. So, this might not have been a bad decision. This might have been a decision that they felt like they needed to make in order to continue the league. In order for the league not to fold, in order for, like they said here, to supercharge the business growth, to include better marketing and more innovation. And I've actually spoken to people who are much deeper in the WNBA circle than I am. And a lot of people, they say that Kathy has done a lot of things that have actually saved the WNBA.
Let's break down these numbers because they tell the whole story. The WNBA controls 42% of its own operations. The NBA holds another 42%. Those outside investors own the remaining 60%. So when players push for that 50-50 revenue split that NBA players enjoy, they're not just sitting across from league executives, they're dealing with external investors who have absolutely no reason to cut into their returns for athletes they have no connection to. This ownership structure is the elephant in the room that everyone keeps dancing around. Sure, you can point fingers at Kathy Engelbert all day long, but she inherited a league that had been bleeding money mud decades. That 2020 bubble season pulled back the curtain on just how underfunded everything really was. Players stuck in mediocre accommodations, complaining about meal quality, while NBA players got the full 5-star Disney experience. The visual was awful, but the financial reality behind it was even worse. The league simply couldn't afford to do any better.
Fresh off their first WNBA championship, the Las Vegas Aces unveiled a 64,000 square foot practice facility and headquarters in Henderson, Nevada. That's actually crazy if they were the first ones to kickstart this facilities in just 2023. And that's what I'm trying to paint this picture, you guys. The league has come so far since 2020. Since 2020 that they said it themselves, it was a groundbreaking CBA. They were still in the trenches. I'm sorry. A groundbreaking CBA. They were still in the trenches. They didn't really have practice facilities. They were sometimes practicing at a 24-hour fit.
Then we got the prioritization clause. January 2020, woven into that historic CBA that had everyone celebrating, the concept was straightforward. Play in the WNBA, put the WNBA first, no more skipping training camp because your European team advanced to the playoffs. No more picking Barcelona over Phoenix because the overseas paycheck was 3 times bigger. Players signed off on this because their alternatives were genuinely terrible. Rookie deals were paying $70,000 per year. Diana Taurasi had literally been offered $1 million by a Russian franchise just to sit out an entire WNBA season. That's how lopsided the financial landscape was. International teams could casually outbid the league for its own star players. But here's what's gotten messy. Prioritization was meant to be a temporary fix, a stopgap until WNBA paychecks became competitive. Fast forward 5 years and salaries have maybe doubled, while new ventures like Unrivaled are throwing around $100,000 for 2 months of basketball. Players are starting to wonder why they're prioritizing a league that still can't match their market value.
That much bigger and that much brighter on the WNBA. And I'm really glad that she mentions it here. It's just Caitlin Clark. It's always been just Caitlin Clark. Yes, there are other great young players who have come into this league, but it has truly been the Caitlin Clark effect. Even if you look at the viewership for Iowa this year, the viewership for Iowa in the past couple years, even after Caitlin Clark departed, there are still people that are tuned into Iowa when Iowa was never at the top of the viewership numbers. It's because of Caitlin Clark. When she came into the league, the Indiana Fever were third last.
April 2024 flipped the script entirely. Caitlin Clark enters the draft, and the WNBA doesn't just grow, it absolutely detonates. Attendance records get obliterated. TV ratings hit levels not seen in a quarter century. The Indiana Fever jumped from third worst attendance to first place instantaneously. Not over a season, literally overnight. This is where player frustration starts making complete sense. They opted out of their CBA in October 2024 because they could read the writing on the wall. The massive media rights deal was incoming, $2,000 million per year for 11 years. They understood that if they didn't move fast, they'd get trapped in another agreement that paid them pennies on the dollar compared to what the league was actually generating.
Force of the sport's rise in popularity, other college stars such as fellow 2024 draftee Angel Reese and more recently 2025 #1 pick Paige Beckers also brought significant followings to the WNBA. And I will agree, they brought significant followings, but some of those followings haven't translated to viewership and attendance. And we've kind of also seen that in Unrivaled. And I'm not saying that all of the viewership woes in Unrivaled are because people aren't following Paige Beckers. Like, I don't think the product is that great either. But we've even seen when Caitlin Clark goes golfing, that's higher viewership than Unrivaled.
Here's the cold splash of reality, though. That $2.2 billion media package isn't pure profit sitting in a vault somewhere. It's gross revenue with serious expenses attached. Charter flights for every franchise, which didn't exist 2 years ago. Brand new practice facilities sprouting up across the league. The Aces built a 64,000 square foot complex in 2023. Indiana is constructing a $100 million facility. Dallas was supposed to break ground on theirs but pushed it back to 2027. All of this infrastructure costs real money. Money that gets deducted before players see their percentage. This is exactly where negotiations hit a wall. Players want 50% of total revenue. Ownership is floating something around 30%. The distance between them isn't just about greed. It's about completely different visions of what the league can actually sustain.
And then it went straight up when Caitlin Clark got into the league. And it's like, I'm tired of talking about this. You guys have heard it from me so many times. We should be able to stop talking about this. But when there's still people who just deny reality, it is kind of strange. So in July 2024, the WNBA secures monumental media deal. The WNBA agreed to an 11-year media rights deal valued at $2.2 billion or $200 million per year with Disney, Amazon Prime, and NBC Universal. Then in October 2024, players opt out of previous CBA. January 2025, Unrivaled launches, and we talked about Unrivaled more yesterday. The Pay Us What You...
February 2025 brought us the All-Star Game protest. Players showed up wearing shirts that read "Pay us what you owe us" during warm-ups. The statement was crystal clear. The follow-through was questionable. After making that political statement, they went out and delivered one of the most lackluster all-star performances in years. Minimal effort, zero dunks, defense was practically non-existent. Fans purchased tickets to watch the elite talent in women's basketball and got what looked like a casual pickup game. Stack that against the 2024 All-Star Game, which was genuinely to cut of and entertaining. The difference was stark, and it gave skeptics exactly the ammunition they were looking for. If you want professional compensation, you need to deliver professional performance, particularly in showcase events when you're trying to expand beyond your core fan base.
Forth. And this was crazy, you guys. And we covered it. We were covering it daily because this was right before the WNBA finals. And if you remember, Nafisa Collier also got injured by Alyssa Thomas, and the Minnesota Lynx did not end up going to the finals. And I do always wonder, like, if they would have gone to the finals, I don't think Nafisa would have done this thing with Kathy. Like, I think she would have waited until after the WNBA finals, but it definitely took the spotlight off of the finals, which the finals were also trash. Like, the Aces swept Phoenix. There were more injuries, like Satu Sabli had that really scary concussion.
September 2025 delivered the Nafisa Collier controversy. Just before WNBA finals tip-off, she went public with her criticism of Kathy Engelbert. The timing wasn't accidental. She knew it would hijack the entire news cycle, and it worked perfectly. Except, it also shifted focus away from the finals, which turned into an anticlimactic sweep, with Vegas dominating Phoenix. What's fascinating about that moment is the context. Collier's Minnesota squad had just been knocked out of playoff contention. Would she have spoken up if they'd reached the finals? Highly doubtful. This suggests it wasn't purely about moral principles. It was calculated strategy. Maximize your platform when you have access to it, even if it means stealing thunder from the actual basketball being played. That's become the recurring theme. WNBA conversation increasingly revolves around everything except what happens between the lines. Contract negotiations, media deals, ownership drama, political activism, all significant topics, but none of them matter if casual viewers tune in and witness a boring game.
Players are going to be in the league forever. So you're going to have to enjoy the product that is on the court. And that should be the main focus, I feel like, for everyone. And if there's a great product, you will get paid more. The fans will come. The fans will want to watch. You will get the casual fans. You will get the NBA fans. You will get the male fans, which honestly, most sports fans are men. Like it or not, more men watch WNBA than women do. So it's like, in order to get the male sports fans from these other sports, you have to put out a good product. So I feel like that should always, always, always be the focus.
This creates the core tension driving everything. The WNBA has leverage right now specifically because of Caitlin Clark. Not the collective effort, but one individual player who dragged millions of eyeballs to women's basketball. Iowa viewership remained sky-high even after she graduated. Indiana transformed into the league's most-watched franchise overnight. When she plays recreational golf, it generates higher ratings than unrivaled games. This isn't subjective opinion, it's quantifiable data. And it creates an uncomfortable dynamic. Players are bargaining as a unified group, demanding revenue splits based on the league's overall valuation. But that value is overwhelmingly concentrated around one person. Angel Reese joined a Chicago Sky organization that was already top 3 in attendance and watched it plummet to bottom 5. Paige Bueckers commands a massive social media following, but it hasn't boosted unrivaled viewership the way everyone anticipated. The rising tide didn't lift every boat equally. It launched Caitlin Clark into orbit, while everyone else scrambles to stay relevant in her gravitational pull. So here's our actual situation 3 months after Collier's media blitz. Absolutely nothing has shifted at the organizational level. The WNBA and Players Association remain locked in CBA discussions, still deadlocked, still wrestling with identical fundamental issues. Can the league sustain a 50-50 revenue split when 16% belongs to external investors who will never approve it? Can players demand NBA-caliber salaries when the entertainment value isn't consistently delivering NBA-level excitement? Can the organization maintain charter flights and $100 million facilities while simultaneously doubling player compensation? These aren't hypothetical debates, they're actual mathematical equations both sides need to solve. What makes everything more complex is timing. Players possess more negotiating power than in league history, but that power comes with an expiration date. Caitlin Clark's rookie deal lasts 4 years. If the league fails to monetize this moment, if they don't establish sustainable economics while the national spotlight burns brightest, they might not see another opportunity like this for a generation. That's the pressure crushing both sides. Players recognize this as their optimal window to secure proper compensation. Owners understand this as their best chance to construct a foundation that survives beyond one transcendent athlete. Look back at 2020 for perspective. The CBA signed then was labeled revolutionary. Players threw celebration parties. 6 years later, they're staring at $70,000 rookie contracts, wondering how they got fooled. The message couldn't be clearer. Whatever agreement emerges now will shape the league for the next decade minimum. Mess this up, and you're trapped with the consequences. People keep bringing up overseas competition, but the comparison is misleading. Yes, Diana Taurasi earned $1 million in Russia, but she was literally the only player on that roster making elite money. Middle and bench players were earning less than WNBA standards. Same pattern exists in European leagues currently. A handful of superstars get paid exceptionally well, while everyone else fights for table scraps. Some people want this exact model for the WNBA. Remove salary caps, let wealthy owners spend freely. Create a system where elite players earn superstar money, even if role players get abandoned. But that destroys competitive balance. Parity is the only reason WNBA games stay compelling. In a league where any franchise can win on any night, fans remain invested throughout the entire season. Eliminate that balance, and you get the same 3 teams competing for championships annually, while everyone else plays meaningless games. Remember the charter flight controversy from 2022? New York got fined $5,000 for booking charter flights and organizing an unauthorized team vacation in Napa Valley. Back then, it violated competitive balance rules. Now, every team charters routinely. The league figured out that player health and performance matter more than rigid resource equality. Salary structure needs the same evolution, but it's dangerous territory. The moment you allow unlimited spending, you create dynasties. The richest owners dominate. Small markets get abandoned. Instead of building sustainability, you're constructing a playground for billionaires. Vegas opening their facility in 2023 triggered an infrastructure arms race that continues today. Teams realized they needed serious investment in training complexes to compete for top talent, but not every market can afford 64,000 square foot headquarters. Not every owner possesses resources for $100 million practice facilities. What happens to those franchises? Do they accept becoming developmental systems for big markets? Do they fold operations? Do they relocate to different cities? Expansion is supposed to address these questions, but expansion also spreads talent thinner. You're adding teams in markets that might not be prepared, distributing players across more rosters, hoping the Caitlin Clark effect is powerful enough to sustain 16 franchises, then 18, then maybe more. Perhaps the media rights deal is just the opening act, and the next contract will dwarf $200 million annually. Maybe 5 years from now we'll look back at this negotiation and laugh at how modest those numbers seem. Or maybe we're witnessing a bubble driven by one generational talent. When she retires or declines, viewership crashes back to previous levels. Investment in facilities and charter flights becomes financially impossible. Teams start cutting expenses again. That's the gamble both sides are weighing. Players want maximum earnings now while leverage peaks. Owners want protection against futures where revenue disappears. Both perspectives make sense. Both are fundamentally self-interested. That's exactly why they're stuck. The 2020 bubble season feels like ancient history, but only 5 years have passed. Players were staying in average hotels, eating mediocre food, competing in empty arenas with artificial crowd noise. The contrast with NBA bubble conditions was genuinely embarrassing. Kathy Engelbert absorbed criticism for those decisions. But here's the reality. The WNBA couldn't afford better accommodations. The league had survived on NBA subsidies for decades. That 2022 capital raise was designed to break that dependency, attract outside investment, and build genuine self-sufficiency. Did it succeed? Partially. The league acquired resources to upgrade player conditions, but also surrendered equity that now complicates revenue sharing. Was the trade worthwhile? We won't know for another 5 years minimum. What we do is player patience is evaporating. They see the media rights windfall. They see packed arenas. They see Caitlin Clark merchandise outselling everyone in the NBA, except LeBron James. And they're demanding their fair share. The response is complicated because the money is legitimate. But so are the operating costs. The leverage is real, but so are the risks. The future looks promising, but nothing is guaranteed. How does this resolve? Most likely somewhere in the middle ground. Players won't achieve 50-50 splits, but they'll exceed 30%. Owners won't maintain complete control, but they'll protect against worst-case scenarios. A CBA gets signed. Everyone claims victory. And 6 years later, we repeat this exact same argument, unless something fundamental changes. Unless the league develops revenue streams independent of one player. Unless on-court product becomes consistently outstanding, not just occasionally thrilling. Unless the fan base expands beyond diehards and Caitlin Clark supporters into something truly sustainable. That's the real question facing everyone. Not whether players deserve higher compensation, they obviously do. Not whether some owners are being greedy. because some definitely are, while others aren't. The real question is whether the WNBA can construct something permanent, something that survives its biggest star's retirement, something that justifies everyone's current investment. Because if they miscalculate this moment, if they sign a CBA that looks brilliant today but collapses in 3 years, the consequences won't just be financial. They'll threaten the league's existence. The WNBA has unprecedented momentum right now. Waste it and you might never get another chance. So what's your take? Are players demanding too much too quickly? Or are owners refusing to acknowledge the league's true worth? Should the WNBA prioritize long-term sustainability over immediate player earnings? Or is this the moment to risk everything while the spotlight burns brightest? Share your perspective in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue this discussion. Because this negotiation isn't just about money, it's about the entire future of women's professional basketball.